You know, the other thing, the impression I get with you is too that, like, even though you spent years doing stand-up comedy and you know all these guys, you're not that emotionally attached to stand-up comedy. Like when I talk to Seinfeld, this guy,
Right.
he loves it. He lives it. He loves to
That's
break
interesting.
down a joke and analyze it, and it's really fascinating. I enjoy being around him. I've gotten to know him somewhat, and
Right.
he really.
But he's also the best. Like now you're talking about the kind of craftsman. Like he's the guy that you would go to like in an old Italian village where like there's this one guy.
Right.
And he does these like
Who else is like that? Leno? Because he was a great
I don't know
stand-up.
Jay at all because it's, he was always in Los Angeles and he was up before. And I've gotten to know Jerry just a little bit more from being here. But your comedy friends, it's interesting. You go out after shows and stuff, but I was never a hangout guy.
Right.
Like I didn't, so there wasn't a lot of, he was much more of a hangout guy. Like they all used to get together for brunch and then they'd go to a game and
You
all
don't
that.
do that.
No, I'm kind of a hermit. Like
But isn't there a certain necessity to hanging out because then you kind of learn from other guys?
When you're in the clubs.
I
So
see.
that was during my club years. Yeah, I was always at the club.
Hanging out.
Who
told you could be funny and make a living at it?
My friends.
They did?
They didn't tell me I could make a living, but my friends were the ones that I entertained.
How old are you when you go to do stand-up the first time?
I was probably 23 or 24.
Oh.
I had lived, when I got out of school, I went back home to Trenton, lived with a couple of my buddies, and worked in a bar.
Bartending?
I would bartend, yeah.
Mm.
It was called the Bottom Half. It was underneath a liquor store on Route 1. It was a piece
That
of,
is the
just a
bottom
total
half.
shithole. But I also got a job at this club called City Gardens, which was a punk club on Calhoun Street in Trenton. And it was a dangerous, violent place, and I'd never been happier.
Oh, wow.
And it was there that I started to see creative people that weren't, because I
Were
was...
you good the first time you went up?
No.
Horrible. So bad.
Bitter end on Bleecker Street.
No one would have bet on you.
I would try different personas, different things.
Oh, yeah? Like, what are some of your personas? What were you?
Seinfeld was such a...
Influence.
And sort of, you'd kind of grab that rhythm a little bit. What are you going to... Nothing. Just fucking awful. Terrible, terrible, terrible.
How many years does it take before you get good? Like where you'd say, people said, hey, that guy's pretty funny.
That's hard because you can get people to say that without being good.
But when did you start feeling good?
Here's what I feel good about. If you ask me, like, what made me feel the best about show business? And honest to God, it's that I did it. It's that I moved. It's that I mustered up enough energy to pack all my shit into a U-Haul with no job and drove to New York. I had a 6-week sublet, and I did it.
You made it work. Somehow it worked.
The climb, the fact that you were successful and you worked at it and you constantly kept going and pushing yourself. It's not a joy necessarily, but it's at least...
No, but I can remember some nights. So what happened was at the Cellar, I was working at this place called Panchitos on McDougal, doing the day bartending in a Mexican restaurant, which, like, truly the worst job. All you do all day is cut limes and make margarita mix for the night guy who's going to clean the fuck up, and you're going to walk out with a $2 tip out. So... But then at night, I would go to the Comedy Cellar, and back then it wasn't what it is today.
Yeah.
It was still a basement in the Village, but the show would start at 8, and it would just roll all night. There was no different settings, and it was never packed except on the weekends.
Hmm.
And Manny Dorfman, who ran the club, and Esty, who books it, put me on as the last guy every night from Sunday through Thursday.
Is that a bad slot?
2 o'clock in the morning.
That's the worst slot, I guess.
It's the slot that they give someone that for some reason they think, let's just see what happens to this guy.
Right.
Let's see what he uses this for.
Right.
And so you develop your act for a jaundiced wait staff and like drunk Dutch people who wandered in and actually thought there was going to be music.
Right.
But
tough crowd.
But you learned how to be yourself. And once you learn how to be yourself, that's when it opens up.
Right. You're so relaxed.
You learn how to channel what you actually care about.
And
what you actually think about it.
You're right.
And you find your voice.
That's true in radio.
And that's what it was.
Yeah.